Welcome to my Introduction to Computer Networking for Non-Techies course. I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you enrolled. Now we're going to cover a lot in this course. Even though this is a beginner's course, trust me, you're going to learn a lot, and by the time you're done with this course, you're going to have a very good understanding of how computer networks work. Now I want to take a few minutes and I want to walk through the curriculum because I want you to understand what you're going to learn before you jump into the course material. So let's go ahead and let's actually take a look at that right now. So we're just going to take a high-level overview look at the course curriculum, because if we took a deep dive look at everything, we'd be here for 20 minutes or longer, because the course is composed of 27 different sections and the course curriculum PDF is 7 pages in length. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at what's included in this course. So right now we are in section 1, which is our course introduction section. In section 2, we take a look at computer networks from a high-level perspective. I give you an overview as to what a computer network is, and we talk about some benefits as to why we use computer networks. In section 3, we have our course primer section, and this is where we start to talk about how computer networks work. We talk about networking protocols, the OSI model, the TCP/IP model, MAC addresses, IP addresses, and other things. We also have our first 2 Cisco Packet Tracer labs and our first quiz. In section 4, we talk about network topologies. So we talk about physical versus logical topologies, wired versus wireless topologies, and we also have our 3rd Packet Tracer lab and a quiz. In section 5, we talk about networking devices. So you can consider this section your high-level overview to networking devices, some of them which are ones we're going to discuss in much more detail later in the course. So we talk about network interface cards, switches, routers, firewalls, DHCP servers, and lots of other devices. We also have lab number 4 in this section, and of course another quiz. In section 6, we take a look at network cabling. So we take a look at the different types of cabling. We take a look at coaxial, twisted pair copper cabling, fiber optic cabling. We take a look at the standards. We have a live demonstration where I show you how to create a network cable. And then we have lab number 5 and another section quiz. So hopefully you're seeing a trend here that we have a section quiz in pretty much most of the sections of this course. In section 7, we take a look at the OSI model. We take a look at all 7 layers of the OSI model, and we have a section quiz. In section 8, we talk about planning a network. So we plan before we design. So we talk about the entire planning process. We talk about why we plan, the overall process. We talk about things such as establishing a business need, looking at buy-in, hidden costs, and designing based upon specific areas that we want to improve, and some other things. In section 9, we start taking a look at TCP/IP, and in fact, we have multiple different sections on TCP/IP. So sections 9, sections 10, sections 11, and sections 12, they're all on TCP/IP. So in section 9, we do an introduction to TCP/IP. In section 10, we take a look at network layer protocols. In section 11, we take a look at transport layer protocols. And in section 12, we take a look at application layer protocols. And as you can imagine, we take a look at lots of different protocols throughout in these 4 different sections. And we also have some live demonstrations as well. Now, moving on to section 13 through section 15. Sections 13 through 15 are all on IP version 4. So we start off in section 13 doing a high-level overview of IP version 4 addresses and binary math. Then in section 14, we dig a little deeper and we talk more about IP version 4 addresses, the different classes, public versus private IP addresses, the loopback address. We also have our 6th lab, and then in section 15, I show you how to subnet IP version 4 addresses, and we also have a lab there as well. In section 16, we take a look at IP version 6. So we're slowly starting to go to IP version 6. We're making that jump. However, IP version 4 still exists, and IP version 6 is still slowly being adopted. So we're going to do an introduction into IP version 6. In this section, we're going to talk about the different types of IP version 6 addresses, IP4 to IPv6 translation and compatibility, and some other things in that section. In section 17, we then talk about assigning IP addresses. So IP addresses can be assigned either dynamically or statically. So we're going to talk about that. We'll do a couple of live demonstrations, and we'll also have a lab in this section as well. In section 18, we're going to talk about DNS. So we'll have a high-level overview as to what DNS is and its hierarchy, and then we'll also talk about some common DNS records. We'll have an NS lookup, live demonstration, and another lab. In section 19, we're going to take a deep dive look at switches. So we're going to take a look at collision domains, broadcast domains, CSMA CD, managed versus unmanaged switches, VLANs, layer 3 switches, and lots of other things. We'll also have a lab in this section, and of course, another quiz. In section 20, we're going to take a deep dive look at routers. We're going to talk about routers, the routing process, and routing protocols, and we'll also have a lab in this section, and as usual, a quiz. In section 21, we're going to talk about network segmentation, so we'll talk about things such as network address translation, DMZs, port forwarding, and access control lists. In section 22, we're then going to talk about wireless networking and IoT, which stands for the Internet of Things. So I'll provide you an overview of wireless networking. We'll talk about a lot of wireless networking theory and concepts. We'll talk about deploying wireless networking. We'll talk about the associated 802.11 standards. We'll talk about networking security and vulnerability as it relates to wireless networking. And we'll also have a lab in this section. In section 23, we'll then talk about wide area networking. So we'll talk about transmission mediums, termination concepts, broadband services such as dial-up, DSL, cable broadband, and so forth. And then in section 24, we're going to talk about network security. We'll start off with some general IT security concepts such as the CIA triad, least privilege, acceptable use, and defense in depth. Then we'll talk about some specific network security concepts such as VPNs, firewalls, web proxy servers, and so forth. We'll also have a lab in this section. Then in section 25, we're going to talk about designing a network. So we'll talk about the 7 different steps involved in designing a network. We'll start at the basics and we'll work our way all the way to the end of designing a network. Then in section 26, we're going to have some case studies. So there are going to be 2 specific case studies for you to go through if you choose to. And then section 27 is going to be our conclusion. So as you can see, this is a very lengthy and comprehensive course. I definitely recommend that you take this PDF and you print it out and you have it available. That way, as you're going through the course, if you have any questions about what we've already covered or what we'll be covering later in the course, then you'll have it directly in front of you and you'll know what's coming. So anyways, that's going to conclude this video. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video. Take care.